Hey everyone, I am Bryan Rosander. I'm Chuckling Fun on Twitter, and I'm going to be talking about fighting game card games today. I've been playing card games for a long time, and I've been playing fighting game card games almost as long as that, and I've been playing them pretty competitively online in some way or another with my friends too for at least about 5 years. And these games, we're going to talk about what we're talking about here. These games have a lot in common. Like, there are a lot of card games and board games out there, but the fighting card games all have a lot of things in common and a lot of things to share, and they're also very different. So some of the games that we're talking about, a lot of board games you win by winning victory points or doing enough things in the game. Not a fighting card game. In a fighting card game, you hit the opponent, you deal damage, and then they die. And that's something that all of these games will have in common in one form or another. Another thing is, in most of these games, you're only controlling one character. You don't have an army. We're not playing Hearthstone here. You have one character. Sometimes you have a puppet, because those are fighting games too sometimes. But you're moving one guy around on a board or just in the game space. Another common thing, and this is pretty rare in board games, but very common in fighting card games, every character has a different ability. Every character plays differently, and they all have a common, or they all have their own unique ability that makes them play differently from every other character in the game, even if that's the only thing that they have that's different. Another thing, and there's like a couple minor exceptions here, but most of these games, you don't take turns. You both choose your attack at the same time. You play the attack face down. Daniel, can you get him registered for the raffle?
Yes.
So we're doing a raffle. We've got a bunch of products up here. We've got play mats, we've got card games, and at some point, a couple times during the presentation, I'm going to stop and I'm going to say, hey, we're raffling this off, and then we're going to have my friend Daniel over here choose a name out of a randomizer, and that's why he's entering everybody's names in. So we're going to be coming up on the first raffle kind of soon, but after a couple of these slots. So I'll explain to each side choosing their attack more later on, but basically you each have a hand of cards, and you play one of those cards face down, then you reveal, and then the game tells you what you do next. Most of these games are based around a rock, paper, scissors balance that's comparable to a fighting game. So in a normal fighting game, you've got your attacks, you've got your throws, and you've got your blocks. And throws a lot of time will beat a block, and attacks a lot of time will beat a throw, and block beats attack. And that's a basic system for a lot of fighting games, and something like that is going to be in every single one of the games I'll show you. Another thing that makes all of these games interesting, you discard cards. That's going to be obvious to card game players, but it's not at all common, it's not at all familiar to people who play fighting games. Fighting games players are like, what's a card? Oh, we're playing a card game, that makes sense. But when you discard cards, you don't have them anymore. You want to be playing, you have to play a different attack next time. You can't just hit them with the same throw, or you can't hit them with the same low punch like you could if you have a really powerful character in a fighting game. No, you have to balance out your attacks and use your full character's kit. Finally, this isn't exclusive, but most of these games, in a normal fighting game, you do a combo and then you end your combo with a really big super attack. With most of these games, you have to play your supers face down, raw, and you can just wallop somebody with that hit if you do it right, but you're betting a lot on a single attack. So that's going to vary between games, but it can make for some really hype moments, and a lot of these have that aspect in common. Now, you guys might be like, why are these games fun? Why play them slide on a panel that people who want to see these games are coming to see? But I have heard people say, like, if I can play the video game, why am I going to play the card game? And you guys need to be able to market these games to those people. So I'm going to tell you a few things that are different that make these really cool and are going to make fighting games open up to a lot of people who can't play normal fighting games. Number one, you can play these anywhere almost. You can just take them with you in your pocket. Very few fighting games you can take with you in your pocket. A lot of people here are carrying around entire PS4 setups in backpacks and fight sticks that are bigger than their head, and it's hard. Like, I saw some guys playing Smash over here. Yeah, you can do that sometimes, but a lot of fighting games you just can't carry with you. Big advantage. Number two, turn-based strategy. What I'm talking about here is you can take your time. You don't need twitch reactions. You don't need to be like really dexterous and just really good like nailing those combos and stuff. These games are all about thinking and getting inside of your opponent's head, and you have the time to do that. They also tend to be easier to learn than most fighting games. Now, people who have been in this community for a long time, they can pick up a new fighting game really easily. They might find picking up a card game kind of hard, but for most people out there, picking up the card game is easier. So it makes it easier for people to get into fighting games in general because they can see the strategy in the card game where it'll take years for them to see it in the fighting game. Another cool thing, even for those advanced players, there's a Chun-Li character in here. I hate playing charge characters in fighting games, but I find the Chun-Li character in here a blast because they made charging in this game a lot of fun. The real reason I don't play charge characters in other games is I don't want to do the timing. I don't want to be like, hold back for a second. Yeah.
Charge characters.
I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but also for people who are really good at fighting games, these games force you hardcore to learn your mind games. You play a card face down, your opponent plays a card face down, you reveal, and one of those players is getting destroyed. And that forces you to learn how to just do that thinking, what is my opponent going to play? Do we have anything? Do you need something, Ken?
There's a buzz on this side. Someone on the other side.
Okay.
If anyone's bothered by the buzz, you can't hear it on the right side. I don't feel what's up though.
All right. Similar to the mind games, if you're playing a fighting game, you need to have a game plan. You need to have a way to defeat the opponent, and you need to be thinking through that as you go through the game. It might be getting away, it might be getting in close. Card games will force you to understand and develop those game plans far better than playing the fighting games can, because there's less crutches to lean on. You have to, it's almost the entire game between the game plan and the mind games. Something interesting about these, all of these games have fantastic art. The fighting games have fantastic art too, but it's not card art. And if you like card art, these are great games to collect. I mentioned a little bit earlier, but hype moments, that time when you just hit somebody with a super and you destroy them for half their life, that is hype. And your friends are freaking out, and I've done it. And well, the guy I was fighting was kind of crying at the time, but everyone else was happy. Also, we don't want to forget fun. Fighting games and card games, these games are a blast to play. I play these with my friends all the time. We have a lot of fun. So I put in some logos of some popular fighting game card games. We're not going to go through all of these, but we are going to go through most of these today. And I just want you to show you, there are a lot of these games out there, but there are a lot of other games out there that are a lot more common too. So you might not be surprised, oh, I've never heard of that game. Oh, there's 5 others like it, and they're all completely different. Great stuff. So why don't we start up and do a raffle? So pull up a name. The way that we're going to do this, people, is that we're going to choose a name off of the list that we've registered everyone. If you haven't gotten your name into my friend up in the front here, make sure you do that now. And whoever's chosen will get to come up and either choose a playmat, which all the playmats are the same, or one of the 3 boxes. You get your choice of what you want. Oh, we've got some more people. Come in.
Last minute for the raffle.
Yeah, also, make sure you come up at this guy in the front. He's got on the red shorts. Give your name to him. And then get a card from up front. We're giving out free promo cards. Just choose one of your favorite characters. And I'm going to continue with this until he's ready. and he'll tell me when he's going to do the raffle. So the first game we're talking about is called Yomi. Yomi is a term that we use in fighting games to mean reading the opponent, the mind games part that I mentioned earlier. And this is one of the earliest games of this genre created, sometime comparably with like, it's got to be competing with UFS and only UFS at the time. I've got a copy of the game right here to show you. This is Yomi, the old box I got, because I'm old school. And you open it up.
Hey Brian, we're doing the raffle now?
All right, we're doing it.
Cool. So, yeah, trash wine. You got it?
One of the new guys?
One of the units is popping.
All right, so come on up front.
What's going on?
Yeah, we're going to explain it. All right,
Coming up.
you get a prize.
I get a prize.
You can get the choice between a playmat, or you can choose one of these boxes. These boxes are from my favorite of the fighting game card games I'm going to talk about, and this is the last game we're going to talk about.
All right.
So these are 4 characters. These normally go for about $30. I added on some sleeves. That's a couple like $5, $10 more, so that you can play the game today if you get it.
All right.
So one of these, choose. You're the first person.
All right, what do I go for, guys? Do I lead?
Yeah.
The Ryu one is the easiest to learn.
All right, yeah, I'll go for the easy one then.
And these are all in the same game system. So if you get this game, you can play against him today. They're just different characters. All right. So Yomi gives you character decks like this. Here's the box, but they don't fit in it because I sleeved them. And this is a bunch of different cards. And essentially, you get a character card, which gives you your unique ability that I mentioned. And you get a bunch of other cards in here. These are essentially the 54 cards in a poker deck. They literally have the poker deck symbols on the top. So like, that's a 7 of hearts right there. But it's also an attack. Also, jokers. You literally have the jokers in the deck, and they have special effects. So, each of the characters has the same size deck, and you're basically playing down these cards, and each card has 2 sides except for the jokers. So this one has a throw side and a block side. And when you set it face down, you choose which one you want to use. Put those away. So when you're going up against somebody else, you're going to have a hand of like 7 cards or so, maximum of 12. And you're going to be like, okay, I have 7 cards, but I have only about 14 attacks I can use. Where an attack might be a block, it might be a throw, you're going to have all this variety. And each within the attacks and blocks and throws, they have different speeds. And most of them don't have special effects, but they do have a lot of keywords like, oh, this you can combo into this, stuff like that. So I'll put this away. This game is what I call the most of the fundamentals game. And fundamentals, we're talking about things like, this is the game that has the best blocking. Like if you like a game that's about blocking, which might sound kind of funny, but like, how hype is blocking? I want to be doing the attacks and stuff. Yeah. This is like the game for the people who appreciate the most basic parts of fighting games and doing them well, and just practicing and developing discipline to become the best person who's just really good at knowing your normals. And the normals in this game are each different from each other, which is a little bit unusual. You have to actually know the stats on your normals and for the characters that you're facing up against. The cards are relatively simple, meaning that they don't have any special text on them. They don't have like a resolve this effect. They don't have a flip the opponent over on your other side, and then if in this special situation you do double the damage. They don't have any of those effects. You can do a couple things, but it's all within the rules of the game using keywords and icons on the card. Maximum hand size of 12. the reason why it gets so big is that this is the only game that you can do combos in. You can do an attack, and then the opponent has the option to burst out of it like Guilty Gear, and if they don't burst out of it, you can follow up with more damage. Which makes it interesting because you're actually building up a hand, and you're letting the opponent get an idea of how threatening you are with your combos based on how large your hand is and what cards are in the discard. We'll talk about that in a little. The art for this game is a mix of Genzo Man, Concept Art House, Udon Crew, and Long Vo. He got a lot of like traditional Street Fighter artists to work on it. I'm kind of a little unhappy about the art sometimes because it's a little inconsistent because he got so many different artists to work on it. But overall, the art's pretty good. Another odd feature about this game is that there's only 20 characters. I have 10 of the characters in this box. There's another 10 characters who come out after this. And basically, you can know by heart almost everything about these 20 characters. Whereas if you get like, this box has 4, this box has 4, the other box has 4, that's 12 characters there. There's another 40-some characters in addition to the 12 right in front of you for this game. Like, if you want to play this game and you want to know everything about it, it's a lot harder than if you only have 20. So, what makes this game really cool? I mentioned the blue burst. Somebody's coming out with you a lot of damage. You can be like, hey, you just dumped your whole hand, and I bursted, and you didn't read my burst. And the way that you burst is you play a card face down before they do their damage, and you can bluff. You can place down just like a 5. And then they'll like say, I don't think that's a burst, and then they can hit you, and they can do a ton of damage. But if you place down the Joker, and you reveal, then you don't take any damage. And you're like, you just dumped your whole hand, haha, I got you sucker. Some of the characters have installs. If you like install characters in fighting games, you boost your character up, and then you start running and doing damage, and as long as they don't stop you, you keep on doing damage. And you get a lot of special effects with the installs in this game. At least 3 characters have them, and Midori's in particular, he turns into a dragon. And he just wrecks people while he's a dragon. Throwing you everywhere, very high speed, a lot of damage. You just have to knock him out of it. Good luck. This game has some very, very scary supers. They're hard to set up, so it's going to happen in the late game. But if you do a full damage super on somebody, you're going to take off half their life. If you do it for a low health character, more than half their life. You're just going to wreck them. This game is also the only one with chip damage. That's kind of a joke here. It's the only one with chip damage because it's the only one with proper blocking. So none of the other games don't have chip damage because they don't have blocks. But it does have chip damage if you like it. And some of the strategy for this game, let's see what time we're at. All right, we're doing pretty good. Some of the strategy for this game, building up your hand size. Not only building it up in terms of quantity, you also want to build it up in terms of quality. You want to make sure you have a variety of moves. You want to make sure that you have a variety of starters as well as things to do damage. You want to make sure that you present a good threat with your hand. Not only that they know that you have a good threat, but you want to actually know that you have a good threat in your hand. And that's kind of hard, and that's a lot of the game, making sure that you have a good hand quality. This is a very rock, paper, scissors game, far more so than any of the others. Throw will always beat block or dodge. Block or dodge will always beat attack, and attack will always beat throw. Very minor exceptions, and you'd be like, okay, I see what you're saying, but still, it beat it. Very much focused on that core rock, paper, scissors dynamic, far more so than any of the other ones. And this game is all about knowing the intricate details of your character. So knowing your fundamentals, and that means knowing your normals. Like, all the characters' normals are different, and that means, like, he used up his throws, used up his punches. I can go after him with something that he's now vulnerable to because he used up the special cards for that. Also, I mentioned knowing your combos. You have to know, like, if I want to do damage, I want to make sure that I have these cards in hand and I don't use them on something stupid. The only way to get a read on what the opponents are doing in this game is through their discard. You might be like, well, that's obvious. The other games have a lot more information to go on than what's just in their discard. So this one it's very important to have good reads in this game because all you're relying is on their discard, and you can't. It's much harder to maneuver the opponent into a situation where you can just punish them without fear of them responding. So here's some information on the game. We can come back to this if people want to take a picture or something. Basically, I put up a bunch of links and we can get that to you afterward if you want. So why don't we do another raffle right now as we're moving on to the next game. Does everyone in here up to date on the raffle? Everyone has a name in? Good, good. The next game we're talking about is called Flash Duel. This came out a little bit after, maybe before around Yomi, and it's by the same people who made Yomi, so it has the same 20 group of characters. This is also a much, much simpler game to play than Yomi is. Smaller box, and everybody plays with the same deck in Flash Duel.
I got it.
Awesome. All right, who are we talking about?
Francisco V.
All right, all right.
Same playmat?
They're all the same playmat. Awesome.
Thank you.
This game plays on a board which has a mixture of black and white spaces, and some of the character cards have effects which affect the black and white spaces. I describe this game kind of like Dive Kick. Has anybody here played Dive Kick before?
Yeah.
All right. Dive Kick is a game about one-hit kills, a lot of spacing, you're moving back and forth, and when you go in for the kill, you put on a lot of pressure, and you get the opponent in a spot where they're vulnerable, where they're weak, where they did something because they had to be moving around, and you have to put yourself in a vulnerable position to play Dive Kick sometimes, and this game is about capitalizing on that spacing. So you jump forward, you pressure them, you force them to back up a little bit. If they back up too far, they get to the edge of the board and they essentially lose. Meanwhile, if you pressure too hard, you get too close, they can counter and they can push you back. Each character gets 3 cards, and they act as special abilities that they can use throughout the game. They don't have their own deck. They have a common deck, and the common deck works like it's just numbers, 1 through 5. So you're like, I have a 3 in my hand, I have a 5 and a 5, I have a 2, and you're like, I can move forward this many spaces and then do a strike with this ability, with this number, and the opponent has to respond with that number to block it, and then he can come back at you. So the actual movement on the game works very much like Dive Kick, with you literally moving forward and doing attack, and then, okay, that didn't work, I need to retreat or something, or they need to retreat. This is also the only game I'm showing which each player does not set their card face down. That makes it a little bit easier to learn. So if you're like, hey, that's reasonably cheap, I don't even have to do face downs, it's easier to learn. This might be one of the easiest games out here, which is why it's kind of simple. One of my friends was like, yeah, it's a little too simple to me, I want a heavier game. This is what we call a filler game in board game stuff. So you play this before you play the other games to get everyone warmed up or when everyone hasn't arrived yet. Also, all of the art in this game is chibis. So if you like chibis, maybe this is a good option for you. Talked about all that. All right, moving on to the next game. And we're going to go through this one and then do another raffle after this one. Or maybe in the middle of this one. So now we're going to talk about BattleCon. And BattleCon is probably the game I've spent the longest time on, because I've gone through a number of Kickstarters with this game. I bought a lot of these games on Kickstarter. BattleCon has the most characters available, probably about 100 right now. I probably have about 60 or 80 myself. And BattleCon has a couple of major differences from the other games. This game does not have a deck. You have a hand, you have discards, and the discards come back to your hand after so many turns, kind of like a cooldown. But there's no deck. There's no randomness. There's no shuffling. This game is trying to be the closest to a fighting game in terms of that, removing the random number generator. You're just choosing attacks, and after you've chosen your attack, you can't do it for a couple more turns, but outside of that, it tries to be very much like the fighting game feel, just hitting each other. So because there is no RNG, there's no decks, there's no hand advantage, outside of a very few exceptions. you each have the same number of cards in hand. This game has a number of different releases with different characters. Several of the same games have been re-released with updated rules and balance changes. So it's a little bit confusing, and everyone's asking like, which set should I pick up? Which depends a lot on like how experienced are you in board games and fighting card games, as well as like, do you want the latest rule set so you know how to play properly? That can get a little confusing. The art for this game is by an artist called Documento, and you can see some of her work up on the box art, and I'm going to be showing some of the other stuff on there. I have one of the other games right here. You can see a bunch of the characters up front. And this game is set in like an RPG world where the creator was like, he had done a lot of RPG stuff in the past, and then he wanted to make his own fighting card game, so he just like used all the characters from his RPG campaigns. Unlike most RPG campaigns, the story in this game is really good. Like, the characters are a lot of fun, they each have their own stories and their own campaigns, so there's like 3 or 4 campaigns going on at once in a game, and a lot of like, the art is really great and the stories are really great. There could be a little bit more there, but they're going to be releasing more of that. There is not a whole lot to memorize in this game, especially because almost everything is on the table, and they have easy reference cards for each player. So your opponent gets a reference card, and they can look at that, and you could just show them your hand because everything's public information. They know exactly what cards are in hand, but they can also just look at their reference card. And that makes everything easy to understand. And the other unique thing about this game, besides the RNG, you play 2 cards instead of 1. One of the cards has one set of effects, the other card has another set of effects. Some of those cards are common between all the characters, with few exceptions. The other cards are all unique. So basically, you choose 2 cards from your hand. One's going to be like aggressive, like an adjective, and the other card's going to be an action, like a grasp. So you're playing aggressive grasp, and you reveal them both at the same time. So each of the characters in this game come with standees and boxes, so I'll show you some of that. Playing a board like this. And you get a box like this, which you open up. You get a standee, which fits into a little plastic stand that you get with the game.
Brian, can I interrupt you for 2 seconds?
Sure.
Okay. So, I know you guys are into fighting game TCGs, but if any of you are into Magic the Gathering as well, we're doing a Modern Horizons $10 draft tonight at 11 p.m. And for letting me interrupt him, I got a Dragon Ball Super starter deck that he can raffle off to somebody. It was opened at Mega and then they returned it, but nothing's been taken out of it. So enjoy. Hope to see some of you guys tonight. Turn some cards sideways for Modern Horizons. See you in Jamaica.
We just had another item donated to the raffle. So, this is an example of a base, something common to all the characters, no real art on it. Meanwhile, this is one of her character cards. This is called a style. It has the adjective on it, and this makes something unique to her, and each character has like 5 of these. She also has some special ability cards, which you can play these face down for her, but their ability cards all work differently. She also has a character card that you can look at. This has the ability text on it, so how that character works and what unique ability they have. Most of the characters in this game have abilities which are based on tokens. So they'll have little chipboard components that you have. So this character has these little pentagons, and these are based on how many of which type you have, these affect your ability. So if you have 2 of one on this side, that means that you get some effects on your cards, and then they flip over and you get the other effects the next turn. Other characters will have tokens that you put down on the board. Some characters will have ones that you give to an opponent. Lots of different effects. I'm gonna have some water. And how about we do another raffle while we're doing this?
Sure.
All right. The way the balance in this game works, I mentioned that not all the games were as clearly, as directly rock, paper, scissors as the other ones. In this one, the rock, paper, scissors system is roughly represented by the bases that are common to each character. So, Grasp is a really fast attack and beats some mid-speed attacks. Drive does a little bit of damage and has enough damage to knock some of the other stuff out that don't have enough blocking power to go through it. Stuff like that. You have a lot of like cards which are really slow and powerful, a lot of cards which are really fast, a lot of cards which will do like a move effect or a retreat effect, one card which just has a lot of range and acts like a ranged attack. And that's how the rock, paper, scissors system in this works, by moving people around, by doing a lot of damage, and then suddenly they can't hit back. Instead of a block, this game has a dodge roll. You're literally playing Super Smash Brothers and dodge rolling around each other to fight. This is also the game where you have the discards, they cycle through, and the unique abilities. What makes this game cool? The finishers in this game, you can only play them once. In Yomi, that was kind of true. You could play them less times, and you could play the weaker versions and stuff like that. In this game, you play it once, and it has crazy effects. Usually you have to play them near the end, and you do it to finish off the opponent or to make a comeback. All those tokens that I mentioned, a bunch of the time what you're going to do is you play your attacks face down, and then you do an anti-step where you can play some of your tokens for special effects. Not all of the characters do something in the anti-step, but you're thinking, oh, I bet he's playing this, or I'm playing this, and I need something to cover it. So you play your ante, and you can see what the other person's ante is. You go back and forth, and you're adding different effects to your attack. A lot of the characters have payout attacks. Payout attack means you're doing a lot of damage. These aren't supers, but they do consume a lot of resources. Another thing in this game, and this is kind of a lot of fighting game language vortexes. In this game, that basically means that you have a set of attacks where if you get the opponent in the right position, you can keep on doing damage and hitting them, and they're going to be in a really bad position. Let's say you have them up against the wall, and you're like, punch, 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 with different attacks. And you just keep them in the same spot, and they can't get out of it, and you're like, what is this game? You shouldn't have gotten into that position, man. I'm just going to wreck you. And you have to dodge roll out of it. So another more general concept is called a card lock. You know what the opponent has in their hand, and you might get them into a corner, or you might move out to range, and suddenly they realize, hey, I don't have a card to deal with this. Like, they played the wrong attack. They weren't thinking about their next turn. They're going to take some damage. Some of the strategy, the way this game works is to see if you might be interested. Generally, everything is balanced around a set of common stats. You know, every character is going to have stats like these because they're on the bases. And then you're thinking, if I need something to beat those stats, here's what I need to be thinking about. You want a lot of range 1 to 3. One of the attacks retreats 2, so it'll push you right still in range of a 1 to 3 attack. And all the numbers here work like that. You just have to remember these numbers, and then you look at a card and you say, okay, here's how it works around those numbers. If somebody's doing their really strong attack, you either dodge it so that it misses, or you can clash it. And clashing means that you play down an attack that's the same speed that they have, and then you basically both have to choose another attack, but the style that you play just stays down, you just choose a different base. Since they played their payout attack, it's probably going to be really powerful, but only with that base. You mess them up. You need to manage your discards, you need to manage all your resources, and the last thing here, I mentioned walls a couple times. Being against a wall means that you can't really burst because you're not going to go anywhere. Burst is a retreat attack. So you'd be like, so why would I ever want to be against a wall? A lot of characters don't care about bursting, they're not about retreating. They want the opponent not to be able to dodge them. And one of the dodge effects only works if you cross over the opponent. If you're against the wall, they can't cross over you. So you can get against a wall if you're a really big character, and you can wallop them because you're up against the wall and their defenses are down. So that's how that game works. And here's the more information. Do we have the raffle?
Yeah. Benjamin.
All right, you won. All right. Come up and choose. You can get a playmat. You can get the Dragon Ball card game. You can get one of these. If we run out of something, I'm gonna choose. We're gonna keep one of those till the end and raffle that off last because I'm thinking that these might be the most popular. So if you want one of these, get it now, and then we're gonna save the last one for the raffle at the end.
Is the last one a surprise, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Mike's a little bit closer.
There we go.
All right.
Last one is a surprise, I'm assuming?
No. I want to make sure that the best stuff gets last at the end. Everyone stays for it.
Okay.
So you can choose either one of these. You can get a playmat. You can get the Dragon Ball. And I'm going to continue with the panel while we're going. All right.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. All right. The next game that we're talking about is called Dragon Punch. And I was talking about a small game earlier. This one is even smaller and simpler. Here it is right here. It's in a wallet. Each player gets a set of attacks like this. You can literally carry around everything you need to duel with other people in a shirt pocket. You also get different characters. Right here, and they have special colors. Two of the characters actually come from BattleCon because they did a partnership. The way this game works is your life is decided by how many cards you have. Every character gets the same amount of cards, and each time you get hit, you flip a card upside down. Flips upside down, it becomes red. Red means you took some damage, but the red cards are more powerful. So your character gets more powerful at the end of the game. And each of the cards are different here, so you have kind of the same mechanic working in BattleCon. There's no RNG in this game. You just are playing your cards, and he plays his card, and you know what cards he has left, and you're thinking, I need to beat whatever he's going to play. And you also have some pad attacks in here. You have some dodges, like a card that will allow you to like jump over or taunt them. And instead of the attacks cycling through on cooldown, they cycle through in this game based on when you taunt the opponent. You basically need to take a turn where you do no damage to get everything back. And Dragon Punch, $40 for the complete set. That is not true. This game goes for about 10. I copied some information from other pages. I copied a bunch for this one. You can buy this. I think this is still distributed by Level 99, and I'm going to talk about a lot of their stuff later on, and they're friends with Jasco. So that's Dragon Punch. Talk about that one later if we go to the demo area. And now we're going on to the last game, and this one is right now my favorite. So I want to spend the most time on this one. And this is also the game that we're raffling out here up front with the Exceed boxes. So Exceed is a crossover fighting game. And by crossover, I mean it's kind of like Smash Brothers or BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. All the characters come from different franchises and fighting games and card games. So the first one we show up here is from a set called Red Horizon. Yeah. Is this better?
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
All right. Exceed, Red Horizon is a UFS set. And they had Level 99 use all of their characters, or a bunch of their characters, for Exceed, so you can play them in either game. So Exceed is developed by the same people as BattleCon, and it's kind of a BattleCon 2, but they made a lot of changes. So it's really its own thing, and they're still supporting both games. A lot of the changes that they made were to make the game easier to balance and easier to work with. One of the problems with BattleCon, because there's no RNG, and because there's so few cards in your hand, it's kind of hard to balance, and some of the characters just wallop otherwise. They're working on that, they're making improvements, but I really, really like good character balance, and Yomi has good character balance too. So I'm playing this one a lot. BattleCon had the ability to move back and forth on the board, so does this one. This one actually has a bit more abilities for you to do spacing, so you can move back and forth, even if you're not playing a card to do so. There's other ways to move back and forth outside of the actual attack phase. The only game here that actually combines turn-based and simultaneous play. Simultaneous play is when you lay your cards face down. Turn-based play is when you're doing stuff on your turn and you act, and then the opponent acts on his turn and you switch back and forth. The way this game does this is, on your turn, you can choose to start an attack, and then each player lays their cards face down using simultaneous play, and then you reveal them, and the person who started the attack gets a bonus. And then after you do that attack, after the attack is done, the opponent takes their turn. So you spend turns doing a bunch of actions and building up your hand, and you do a series of attacks back and forth, and then you go back to actions, usually. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you can the two are balanced very well together, and it makes it interesting. A lot of the actions that you can do between the actual strikes allow you to do something that this game does, which none of the other games do I've talked about, and that's footsies. In a fighting game, you do a lot of pokes. You hit the opponent, and you got the right range, and you got the right setup where they move right into your range, and you punish them for it. You do a lot of moving back and forth to adjust your spacing. All of that you do in this game, and in the other games, it had to be included in your strike. You had to combine the actual attack with the movement. This is the only one that allows you to move outside of an attack. You kind of pay for it by giving up like blocking and some of the other fundamental stuff, but you can't have everything. Because you have turns where you do things, this game has a concept I call action economy, which is kind of like the feel that you get when you're playing a CCG, where you're like, you build an engine. You get an effect which combos off of an effect, which combos off of an effect, and you do, now you set up a really powerful setup, which the opponent can't counter. So you can do that type of thing in this game. You can have a setup which will draw you a lot of cards. You can be using the ability on your character, and that's unique to this game because you have individual turns to do it on. There's not a whole lot to memorize in this game, even though it's more complex. Your character has 7 unique cards to their character. You also have 8 unique cards, which are like the bases from the other game, where you just have to know what they are, and every character has them. And you don't combine cards together in this game usually, so you just play that card raw, and it's going to be the same for every character that plays it, unless they can add stuff onto it. So I show some more art here up on the side. These are from the 7th Cross set, which is kind of like a Darkstalkers or Castlevania. And each of the characters in this set is a monster. And they begin as sort of like a human with some special powers, and then they transform and they go full monster, and the game becomes pretty crazy. One of the unique mechanics, another one of the unique mechanics in this game, is each character has an upgrade to their unique ability. After a certain portion of the game, you're building up your character, you're starting to get strong, you build some meter, you flip your character over by spending the meter, and now your character gets some additional ability in addition to their original unique ability. And you can that's balanced against, you might want to spend that on flipping your character over, or you might want to spend that on special attacks. You have a lot of options to use meter. So this set is from a game which hasn't actually been released. It's going on Kickstarter in a few months, hopefully. But it looks really good. Some other universes include Street Fighter, which we have up here, they also have a couple of universes with like single fighters only. Has anyone here heard of Shovel Knight? Shovel Knight is a character in this game that you can play. Has anybody here heard of Penny Arcade? All right. Penny Arcade has a spin-off series called Noir Automata. The main character from Noir Automata, Carl Swagning, is in this game. You can play him. He's really good. I have him here in my set, but we're not raffling him off. He is really strong. He's very scary. Does anybody here know Red Dragon Inn?
I'm gonna raise my hand because I heard Red Dragon.
Yeah. Do you know who Pookie is?
Yes, Pookie the bunny.
The bunny. You can play Pookie in this game.
Is that?
I have him with me. I don't have him up here on the shelf, but I have Pookie with me. And if you come to the demos afterward, I can have you play Pookie as a fighting game character.
Wait, is this? Oh, this is Exceed, right?
This is Exceed, yeah.
Sorry for being slow poked out.
Make sure he's in the raffle stuff.
Yeah.
Get him with the promos and stuff. And that guy back there too. Come up and we're doing raffles and drawings, so make sure you get registered. Speaking of which, after we get these guys registered, let's do another raffle.
Yeah.
So all of these characters from different universes, and they're adding more. If you like a game, you can get involved in the community, and you can say, hey, what about this series? I want you to go talk to them, see if you can make something happen. We're having lots of cool stuff coming out. Each of these cards has a second ability on them. So this is the character card right here, but we're looking at like this one right here. It has a top part for an attack, and it also has a bottom part which has a special effect on it. And that special effect, you don't play as an attack. You play it face up, and it acts like a spell. That spell can boost your next attack, or that spell can do fancy stuff in between. All right, raffle time. In this game, each hit you do builds meter. That's not the case in every other game.
One.
All right. And we're not doing the same people twice, by the way, just to make sure.
Yeah, I'm keeping count.
Yeah, grab that one. And you get the sleeves with it too. I like sleeving my games. These games are important to sleeve because you're going to be shuffling a lot. Sure. So because you're going to be shuffling a lot, you need to protect your cards like you would in a CCG. I want people to be able to play these games today or this weekend, so I brought sleeves so that you can protect the cards and you can play. All right. The boosts, which are on the bottom of cards, act like spells that you can play in between attacks. I mentioned footsies. Boosts are an important part of that. You can just increase the speed of your next attack. That's really good. The other mechanic in here is you typically run through your deck, your entire deck, at least once per game. You go through all the cards. There's if you're playing a CCG, you'd be like, hey, I'm not even, like, I haven't reached the card I need. You have to use cards to pull that card out or something. Not in this game. You just dig through your deck like ham. You just go for it. And some characters do that more than others, but you're typically going to go through every card at least once. If you are like upset that you didn't get your super, you can get it, just keep on digging. Some cool stuff from this game. You get to upgrade your unique ability. Parry and reading are characters that every character has access to. Parry allows you to force the opponent to discard a card. You choose the card. If they have it in their hand, they just discard it. You just knocked one of their best moves out of their hand by reading the mind of your opponent. You know they were saving it for something, and you just knocked it out, and now they're in trouble. It's really cool. If your reading failed, if your parry failed, if you didn't guess the card, they have to reveal their hand. A lot of people do parry and just name a card they know isn't in their hand in order to get them to reveal their hand, and they can wallop them now that they have all their hand information. Reading works a similar way. You name a card, but the opponent has to play it in a strike. You play the reading, it's a boost, it's a spell. You play your own character, you play your own card. They have to play that card if they have it in hand. If you just did a parry on them and you saw their hand, you know they have the card. You have a lot of nonsense you can pull with this and with your character abilities. This game has something called a wild swing. Have you guys ever jumped into a game and you didn't know what you were doing, so you just started hitting buttons? Yes, this game, you can just choose the top card of your deck. You don't know what it is. You just play that card. You're like, that's stupid. It's also really good.
No, that's funny.
If you play this game, there are characters, number one, that are dedicated to doing this. In this set right here, you can get Dan Hibiki. He is the Wild Swing character of the Exceed Street Fighter set. He plays several times during the game. I'm just playing the top card and I don't know what it is. And he's good at it. And there are other characters, I play several of them, that are very good at that. And part of the reason why it's good, it's not taking a card from your hand. You're not going down on cards. You can just put on pressure and not give it up, but you're also like, I just played something stupid. But that's Dan. EX attacks, you can power up your moves by playing both cards. So you have 30 cards in your deck, and there's 2 of each card, so you have 15 unique cards in the deck. If you play the 2 cards that are a pair, you get boosted effects. Additional power, additional speed, additional armor, and additional guard. Basically, everything gets buffed. It's really good, mostly because additional speed is really good. If you're on defense, additional armor and guard is really good. You also get the additional power, like everything's buffed. Part of the balance of this game is, if you get an additional 1 or 2 speed, you're probably going to beat whatever card counters the card you're playing. So suddenly, you played EX attack on offense, you get the +1 speed, you get the speed advantage. Suddenly, you're likely to beat whatever they can throw at you. Unless they get really crafty, you just eliminated most of their options. EX attacks are really good. Other characters can just play cards face up. Also, it sounds like a terrible idea, but when you do so, you usually get a stat bonus. Suddenly your attack becomes faster or more powerful. And the characters are designed around being really strong when they play their cards face up. They know what's coming at you. They can hard counter it if they have the right card in hand. The people who play those characters tend to be a little crazy. But again, I play the Wild Swing characters too, so I'm a little crazy too. Criticals is a unique mechanic for the Street Fighter set. Criticals work kind of like how EX attacks work in Street Fighter, where you can give an attack special properties by spending meter. So you can be like, hey, I just want to deal extra damage. I spend some meter, do a lot more damage. They don't know what effects are going to happen though because they're unique per card. So you could play down an effect with a critical that maybe pushes them away, and they thought it was going to be damage. They try to counter your damage, but they whiff instead. Several of the characters also have the ability in this game, not many of them, but to play card combinations. Combination is basically like, you can play multiple cards, and separate from the EX attack effect, you can get the triggers from both cards. You can play down a really fast attack, and you can give it the triggers of bonus damage and moving forward. Basically, you can play like a really fast move forward and attack card, and they can't do anything about it because you got the right combination. Those characters have some wild stuff they can do, and they take some penalties in character design because of it, but they're a lot of fun. Why don't we do another raffle? So the strategy for this game, based on BattleCon, but the actual stats on the cards are a lot more complex. You can't just know this much damage, this much guard and armor, I'm going to be safe. In this game, you have to know, I need enough guard and armor at this speed, or I need enough range at this speed. I need enough speed at this range, those types of things. The balance between attacks becomes a lot more complex.
Right.
Oh, the name, yes.
Yeah, Kristen R.
Come up here. We're going to save this one till the end. Though, if you get the raffle at the end, you can trade out whatever you want for that. And we'll do another raffle for the item that you left. Sure. All right. So the way this is balanced, typically, the farther away you get, the slower your attacks get. The closer you are, the faster your attacks get. The lower your speed gets, the more damage you do. The lower your speed gets, the more armor and guard you have. And Armor and Guard in this game allow you to hit back if you're hit. So a lot of characters are slow, heavy characters, like a grappler or something, or a guy with a gigantic sword. And you hit them, and they kind of sneeze, and then they blow you away because you didn't think hard enough to counter that. This game is a lot about managing resources, but it's a little bit different in terms of what resources you have from BattleCon. In this game, everything is cards. You have a deck, you have an actual board, which if you don't have a playmat, the board is just cards. You can have your own markers or something, you have to get your own life counter or something. That is not cards, but everything else in this game is cards. And you're going to be managing hand size. 5 more minutes? Okay. You're going to be managing hand size, you're going to be managing how much meter you have, what attacks you have. So I'm going to move on to describing the differences between some of the Exceed sets. So you can be like, okay, I want to focus on those characters. First of all, we have the Red Horizon characters. And these were the first set released. And here's some example character art.
Poor card balance.
This is the only set which has like fan service characters in them. So if you come here and you're like, I only play the fan service characters, you pretty much have to play the Red Horizon characters. There are some characters which get a little bit close to fan service in the Street Fighter, if you know who I'm talking about, but they aren't nearly as fan servicey as the UFS characters are, as the Red Horizon characters are. Because this was the first set released and they did not have a proper balance team yet, some of the characters are not balanced very well. 2 of the characters are actually banned, Alice and Juno. A lot of the other characters are just weak, so they're not banned because they're weak. I have a lot of those characters with me, so you can try them out if you're interested, and you can see a lot of their art. Because this is the first set, most of these characters are beginner characters, so okay, they're weak, but they're easy to learn. And not all of them are weak. Some characters, if you're interested in picking up sets, when I was playing this season, I played a lot of Mei Lian. She is brutal to play against. You don't want to play against her in the demo area unless you're really like death. Marathi, similar. He's one of the random wild swing characters. Lily is a ranged character, uses a lot of guns. Heidi up here is a boost character where she just plays a lot of cards and spells. And down here is the banned character, Alice. Another set, 7th Cross. This is my favorite set currently because it's the most complex. The characters get really wild when they get going, doing a lot of damage, and you have a lot of very complex game plans. I said it's kind of like Castlevania in its design and its art, and the characters in this set get transformations which act as additional unique abilities. They also get UAs, which are completely different from their normal UAs. Most of the other seasons, you get like an upgrade to your unique ability. In this one, you just get something different. And the last set, we've got the Street Fighter set that we're auctioning, or that we're raffling off. These tend to be very good starter sets, with the characters in this one being the most complex. Again, these have good character balance. You don't have any really weak characters. While in the first set, some of the characters were balanced, but their cards were weird. Like they might just teach you to play the game wrong because they have weird stats on them. In this one, even the cards, everything is very well thought out. Another effect, a lot of the Shoto characters have spammable fireballs. You can be Ryu, and you can just play the same fireball attack over and over and over again, if they let you. Currently, there are 12 characters. They've all been out here in front of you. We're going to get another 24 Street Fighter characters. We don't know who most of those characters are unless you're in playtest. I recommend starting with the Ryu box, then Akuma, which we picked up over there, and then the Chun-Li box, which is the most advanced. Chun-Li and Vega might be okay beginners for the Chun-Li box, but this tends to be the most complex. So if you're like an advanced player and you're like, hey, I want to be good, great box right here. Also, a lot of people were complaining originally, like you released a bunch of Shoto characters. You've got Ryu, you've got Ken, you've got Sagat, you've got Akuma, a bunch of Shoto characters. They all play wildly differently. If you're thinking about like I don't want to play another Shoto character. You play them and you're like, what am I doing? I have no idea. Oh, these characters all play wildly differently. So let's do the final raffles now, and we'll close this up.
So I have Michael J.
Sweet.
All right. So since we're doing final raffles, you can take your pick. Awesome. And one more.
Big heart.
This person gets the map. All the other stuff up here is mine. These are here. I'll show you this while we're doing it. Wait, choose out another guy.
All right, I got it.
Other playmats I have. This is a playmat for 7th Cross. So you've got up top, you've got Jeffrey, who's like a knight, and on the bottom, you've got Jeanette, who's like a witch. She plays like a little bit like Zelda.
All right, so I have Chris S. for raffle winner.
All right, Chris, we had a couple people leave, so if nobody's responding to another one.
Okay. Tyler H.
All right, father-son team?
No.
Okay.
I for cousins.
Cousins, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to pack up my stuff now. I'm going to get down. And then I'm going to head over to Jabelu Land. And I'm going to be doing some demos of games over there. So if anybody wants to join me over there, my favorite game to play is Exceed. So if you want to play Exceed straight up, Yomi's also really good. I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to play BattleCon because it takes too long.